The email from Mike sat unopened in my inbox for 3 hours. "Working late again?" it would surely say. The 3rd time this week, the 20th time this month. I sipped my herbal tea and watched raindrops race down the window of our Portland home, each one outpacing the last in their rush toward the ground. Perfect metaphor for my marriage these days, everything sliding downward with increasing speed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I brushed sawdust from my sleeve, evidence of the afternoon, spent in my workshop. The scent of cedar still clung to my clothes, a reminder of the dining table I'd just finished for a client who would pay triple what Mike thought my little woodworking hobby could ever command. The irony wasn't lost on me. While he claimed to be building our future at his financial consulting firm, I was literally building things of actual value. Beautiful, functional pieces that would outlast whatever hollow promises he was making in those late-night meetings. My phone vibrated against the reclaimed oak countertop, a number with an Oregon Coast area code. Normally, I'd let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something, intuition maybe, made me answer. "Mrs. Wilson, this is Tony Ramirez from Shoreline. Property management. I'm calling about your Cannon Beach house." His voice had that practiced professional tone with an undercurrent of awkwardness. "I wanted to check if you've authorized the renovations." I sat up straighter. "Renovations? I haven't approved any work on the property." "Oh." A single syllable loaded with discomfort. "Well, the woman staying there has been making some changes. She's replaced some furniture, repainted the primary bedroom, and today she asked about removing the wall between the kitchen and dining room. Since it's a load-bearing wall, I told her I'd need to check with the owner first." I took a slow breath, my heart thumping against my ribs. "What woman would this be, Tony?" "The one Mr. Wilson brought up last weekend. She said she's his." He paused, clearing his throat. "Creative consultant, and they'll be using the house regularly for collaborative projects." She mentioned making it more compatible with their vision. Our beach house, the one we'd purchased 7 years ago as an anniversary gift, though the property was solely in my name since I'd provided the down payment from my grandfather's inheritance. The inheritance Mike had dismissed as useless land nobody wants, not realizing the value of old-growth timber in an increasingly resource-depleted world. "I see," I said, keeping my voice level. "And did this creative consultant mention how long she planned to stay?" "She said they'd be splitting time between Portland and Cannon Beach, but she's setting up what looks like a permanent arrangement. She's ordered new mattresses, brought in personal items." He trailed off, uncomfortable with the implications. "Tony, what's this woman's name?" "Vanessa Parker. She gave me her card. She's an interior designer, apparently." Of course. She was. Mike had mentioned a new designer working with some of his high-net-worth clients. He'd raved about her fresh perspective and intuitive understanding of spaces. I'd found it odd how frequently her name appeared in conversations, but chalked it up to professional admiration. Now it all clicked into place. "Tony, I need you to do something for me," I said, my mind already several steps ahead. "Please don't mention our conversation to either Mr. Wilson or Ms. Parker. I'll be driving to Cannon Beach tomorrow to assess the situation personally." "Certainly, Mrs. Wilson. Should I prepare anything for your arrival?" "Just a detailed list of all changes made or requested so far." "And Tony, do you happen to have security camera footage of the property?" "Yes, ma'am. Standard for all our managed properties." "Please save the last month's footage. I may need it." After hanging up, I walked to my home office, the converted sunroom Mike had mockingly called my arts and crafts corner when I'd first set it up. If he'd ever bothered to look at my computer screen instead of patting me on the head like a child with a coloring book, he might have noticed the complex spreadsheets, client orders, and business projections that had nothing, to do with amateur crafting. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a file labeled Timber Holdings. Inside was the documentation of my grandfather's legacy: 800 acres of old-growth forest in the Cascade Mountains. When he'd passed 5 years ago, Mike had laughed at my insistence on keeping the land. "Becca, what are you going to do with a bunch of trees? Sell it to some logging company and let's use the money for something practical." But I had refused. Not just because it was my grandfather's wish that the land stay in the family, but because I understood what Mike didn't: the value of patience. My grandfather had taught me that the most valuable things often appear worthless to the short-sighted. I fired off a quick email to Eleanor Mitchell, my business partner and mentor. We'd met at a woodworking convention 3 years ago where I'd been showcasing my custom furniture designs. Eleanor, a respected name in sustainable forestry and bespoke woodcraft, had seen potential in both my work and my timber holdings. Together, we'd built Wilson & Mitchell Custom Furnishings, a company that specialized in high-end, sustainably sourced wood furniture for luxury homes and boutique hotels. Need to accelerate Coastal Hotel's contract timeline. Personal situation developing. Can we meet tomorrow at 8 a.m. before I head to the coast? Her response came almost immediately. Studio at 7:30. Bringing coffee. Everything okay? I typed back. We'll explain in person. Also, time to implement Phoenix Option. The Phoenix Option was our contingency plan for rapid expansion. Specifically, acquiring a struggling millwork shop in Salem that would triple our production capacity. We'd been planning to move on it next year, but circumstances had clearly changed. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike. "Meeting's running late. Don't wait." Up? I almost laughed at the predictability. Instead, I responded with what he'd expect. "No problem. Rest well when you get home." Then I began packing an overnight bag for Cannon Beach, carefully selecting clothes that projected confidence and success, the designer pieces I'd purchased, with my own money while letting Mike believe they were birthday gifts from my wealthy college friend Olivia. Olivia Chen had indeed been my college roommate, but she wasn't my personal shopper. She was my company's legal counsel and one of the few people who knew the full extent of Wilson & Mitchell's success. While Mike thought she and I met monthly, for girls' brunches, we were actually reviewing contracts, analyzing competitors, and strategizing business expansion. As I zipped my bag closed, I caught my reflection in the bedroom mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't just Mike Wilson's accommodating wife who dabbled in woodworking. She was Rebecca Wilson, CEO of a thriving company with clients across the West Coast, owner of some of the most valuable timberland in Oregon, and apparently the unsuspecting victim of her husband's infidelity. But not for long. I was on the road by 6 a.m., the rain having cleared to reveal one of those crisp autumn Oregon mornings where the world seems freshly polished. The drive to Eleanor's studio gave me time to organize my thoughts. The studio occupied a converted warehouse in Portland's industrial district, the brick exterior giving no hint of the sophisticated operation inside. Eleanor was waiting at her workbench, 2 coffee cups and a folder beside her. At 65, she moved with the precision of someone who had spent decades honing their craft, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "You look like you're planning a war," she said by way of greeting. "More like a revolution," I replied, accepting the coffee. Mike's been having an affair with an interior designer named Vanessa Parker. They've been using my beach house as their love nest. Eleanor's expression didn't change, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "And the Phoenix Option? It's time to separate my business completely from my personal assets. Mike has no idea what Wilson & Mitchell is worth now. He still thinks I'm making a few tables for friends of friends." She nodded, opening the folder. "The Salem Millwork acquisition paperwork is ready. We can have it finalized by the end of next week if we push. But Becca, are you sure you want to move this fast?" Emotions and business decisions don't always mix well. I took a sip of coffee, letting its warmth settle me. This isn't emotional, Eleanor. It's strategic. I've been keeping my success quiet to maintain peace in my marriage. I see now that was a mistake. Mike doesn't respect what he doesn't understand, and he clearly doesn't respect me or our marriage. Fair enough. So what's the plan? First, I want to see exactly what's happening at my beach house. Then I'll meet with Olivia to discuss legal options. Meanwhile, I need you to finalize the terms on the Coastal Hotel's contract. 15 high-end boutique properties along the Oregon and California coast, all furnished with our designs. Eleanor whistled softly. That contract alone is worth more than most people make in a decade. Does Mike have any idea? He thinks I sell the occasional piece through local galleries. He has no concept of scale or what custom furniture for luxury properties is worth. We spent the next hour reviewing paperwork, production schedules, and the Salem acquisition details. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. By the time I left, the Phoenix option was officially in motion. The drive to Cannon Beach took just under 2 hours, the familiar coastal highway winding past towering evergreens and glimpses of the Pacific. I'd always loved this drive. The transition from forest to ocean, the way the air changed as you approached the coast, carrying the scent of salt and possibility. Our beach house, my beach house, sat on a bluff overlooking the ocean, its large windows designed to maximize the stunning views of Haystack Rock and the expansive shoreline. I'd found the property, fallen in love with its potential, and used part of my inheritance for the down payment. Mike had contributed to the mortgage payments, but the deed remained solely in my name, a detail he'd never bothered to verify, assuming his name had been added simply because we were married. I parked a block away and walked toward the house, wanting to observe before announcing my presence. Through the front windows, I could see someone moving around inside, a woman with long blonde hair, wearing what appeared to be yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She was hanging artwork, replacing the local artist's pieces I'd carefully selected with generic beach-themed prints. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony Ramirez. On my way with the documentation you requested. 15 minutes. Perfect timing. I wanted a witness for whatever was about to unfold. I used my key to open the front door quietly, stepping into my own home like an intruder. The scent hit me immediately. An overpowering floral perfume that had replaced the subtle cedar and sea salt fragrance I preferred. The furniture had been rearranged, throw pillows replaced, and family photos removed from shelves. The woman, Vanessa, had her back to me, struggling to hang a large canvas print of a sunset over the fireplace. She was humming to herself, completely unaware of my presence. I'd center it about 3 inches to the left, I said calmly. The light from the west window tends to create glare on that wall in the afternoons. She startled, nearly dropping the artwork as she spun around. Up close, she was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s perhaps, with the polished look of someone who put considerable effort into their appearance. "Who are you?" she demanded, regaining her composure quickly. "How did you get in here?" "I'm Rebecca Wilson. I own this house." I stepped further into the living room, noting more changes: new throw rugs, different lampshades, a bar cart, where my reading chair had been. "The more relevant question is, who are you and why are you redecorating my property?" Her expression shifted from surprise to calculation. "You're Mike's wife? He said you never use this place anymore, that you were too busy with your little hobby to appreciate it." "My little hobby," I repeated, the familiar phrase landing like a slap. "Is that what Mike calls my work?" She shrugged, setting the artwork against the wall. "He said you make furniture or something? Crafty stuff for farmers markets?" Anyway, he gave me permission to update the space. It's quite dated, honestly. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Tony Ramirez stood there, clipboard in hand, his expression professionally neutral despite the obvious tension he was walking into. Mrs. Wilson, I have the documentation you requested. Thank you. Tony, please come in. Vanessa glanced between us, her confidence visibly wavering. Look, if there's been some misunderstanding, Mike should be here to clear it up. I'll just call him and— That won't be necessary, I interrupted, taking the clipboard from Tony. Since this is my property, and I don't recall giving permission for any modifications, perhaps you could explain exactly what changes you've made or planned. Tony cleared his throat. Ms. Parker has repainted the primary bedroom, replaced furniture in the living room and guest room, ordered new appliances for the kitchen, and requested quotes for removing the wall between the kitchen and dining area. I raised an eyebrow at Vanessa. Quite ambitious for someone with no ownership stake in the property. Mike said, she began. Mike doesn't own this house, I stated flatly. His name isn't on the deed. Mine is. So whatever Mike said is irrelevant from a legal standpoint. Her face flushed. That's not possible. He told me you bought this place together. A common misconception, I replied, deliberately keeping my tone conversational. One that might have been clarified if either of you had bothered to check the property records before beginning renovations. Tony shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Wilson, the security footage you requested has been saved. Would you like me to send it to you directly? Please do. And Tony, I'd like a full inventory of all changes made, items removed, and modifications planned. Ms. Parker, I turned to her. I'll need a list of my personal belongings that have been relocated or disposed of. This is ridiculous, Vanessa snapped, reaching for her phone. I'm calling Mike. Feel free, I said, moving toward the primary bedroom to survey the damage. Though I imagine he's quite busy with those important client meetings he's been telling me about. The bedroom had been completely transformed. The soothing blue-gray walls I'd chosen were now a stark white. The handcrafted bed frame I'd made from reclaimed dock wood, one of my first major pieces, was gone, replaced by a generic platform bed with a tufted headboard. My grandfather's antique dresser had vanished as well. Where are my original furnishings? I asked when Vanessa appeared in the doorway, phone clutched in her hand. Mike's not answering, she said, ignoring my question. I'm not surprised. Where are my furnishings? She gestured vaguely. The wooden things? In storage. They didn't fit the aesthetic we're going for. The wooden things, I repeated slowly, include a bed frame I crafted myself and an antique dresser that belonged to my grandfather. Both have significant personal and monetary value. Mike said they were just old family pieces, nothing special. I felt a surge of anger, but kept my expression neutral. Tony, please arrange for the immediate return of all original furnishings. Ms. Parker, I think it's time for you to gather your personal belongings. You'll need to vacate the property today. You can't just kick me out. Mike and I have plans to use this place for client consultations. We've already scheduled meetings for next week. I can, and I am. This is my property, not Mike's, not yours, mine. I turned to Tony. Please ensure Ms. Parker has vacated the premises by 5 p.m. today. After that, change the security codes and only allow access to individuals I personally authorize. Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, relief washing over her face. Mike's on his way. He'll straighten this out. Perfect. I'd hoped to confront them separately, but together worked too. While we waited for Mike to arrive, I continued, documenting the changes with Tony, cataloging each modification, each item replaced or removed. The detailed inventory would serve multiple purposes: insurance claims, property valuation, and evidence for whatever legal proceedings might follow. An hour later, we heard a car door slam, followed by hurried footsteps on the porch. Mike burst through the front door, his usually polished appearance slightly disheveled, his expression a mix of anger and panic. "Becca, what the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, then caught himself, attempting to shift to a more reasonable tone. "I mean, this is unexpected. I thought you were in Portland." "Clearly," I replied. "That would explain why you felt Comfortable allowing your creative consultant to renovate my property without permission. Mike glanced between me, Vanessa, and Tony, obviously trying to assess how much I knew and calculate his best approach. "There's been a misunderstanding," he began, falling back on the smooth, reassuring tone he used with difficult clients. "Vanessa and I have been working on a business project that requires a creative space away from the city. I thought you wouldn't mind since you rarely come here anymore." "A business project," I repeated. "How interesting. And does this project require repainting our bedroom, replacing my furniture, and sharing a bed?" His face flushed. "Becca, let's discuss this privately." "There's no need to create a scene. There's nothing to discuss privately that can't be said here. You've been having an affair and using my property to conduct it. Now you're caught. It's really quite simple." Vanessa stepped forward. "Mike, just tell her about our professional relationship, how we're revolutionizing spatial design services for high-net-worth clients." I couldn't help but laugh. "Is that what you're calling it?" Mike straightened, shifting to his authoritative stance, shoulders back, chin up, the pose he used when he wanted to appear in control. "Rebecca, you're overreacting. Yes, Vanessa and I have been working closely together, and perhaps boundaries became blurred. But the renovations were intended as a surprise for you. To update this place since you're too busy with your woodworking hobby to maintain it properly." "My woodworking hobby," I said quietly. "You know, I've always been fascinated by how consistently you underestimate me, Mike. How you've reduced my passion and talent to a cute little hobby because it makes you comfortable. How you've never once asked about my business beyond whether I've sold any crafts lately." Tony cleared his throat. "Mrs. Wilson, I've completed the inventory. All original furnishings will be returned from storage by tomorrow afternoon." "Thank you, Tony," I said, not taking my eyes off Mike. "Please ensure the security footage is sent to my email and to my attorney, Olivia Chen." "Olivia?" Mike asked, confused. "Your brunching buddy? What does she have to do with this?" "Olivia is the chief legal counsel for Wilson & Mitchell Custom Furnishings, my company, the one you think is a hobby." His expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. "Your company? Don't be ridiculous, Becca. You make a few tables and chairs for friends." I pulled out my phone and opened my photos, scrolling to images of my latest commercial installation, a complete furnishing package for the Mountain View Resort in Bend, a contract worth over $300,000. "This is what my hobby looks like. Mike, Wilson & Mitchell furnishes luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, and executive offices across the West Coast. We're finalizing a deal next week to outfit 15 boutique hotels in Oregon and California. That's what I was doing while you were having your affair, building a multi-million-dollar business that you were too arrogant to notice." The color drained from his face as he swiped through the photos, seeing the scale and quality of the projects. Behind him, Vanessa watched with a calculating expression, likely reassessing her choice of partners. "This isn't possible," he muttered. "You never said anything about this." "You never asked," I replied simply. "You assumed my work wasn't worth discussing, so I stopped bringing it up. Just like you assumed this house was partly yours, when in fact, the deed has only my name on it." "That can't be right. We bought it together. I provided the down payment from my grandfather's inheritance. You contribute to the mortgage payments, yes, but legally this property belongs solely to me, a fact you could have easily verified at any time if you'd bothered to look beyond your assumptions." Mike ran a hand through his hair, his confident facade crumbling. "Becca, we need to talk about this privately. There's clearly been a breakdown in communication on both sides." "No, Mike. The breakdown wasn't in communication. It was in respect. You didn't respect me enough to be faithful. You didn't respect me enough to take my work seriously. And you certainly didn't respect me enough to ask permission before allowing someone else to alter my property." I turned to Tony. I'll be staying here tonight. Please ensure all security codes are changed immediately after Ms. Parker removes her belongings. Yes, Mrs. Wilson. And Mike, I added, you should pack whatever personal items you need from here. After today, your access will be revoked. You can't do that, he protested. I pay half the mortgage. Which makes you a contributor, not an owner. I'll have Olivia send over paperwork regarding the separation of our assets. You'll find I've been quite meticulous in documenting what belongs to whom. Mike's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. Why is my manager calling me about some company called Wilson and Mitchell potentially acquiring our biggest client? I smiled. That would be the Coastal Hotels Group. They've been unhappy with their current design firm's work. Your firm, apparently. They approached us last month about handling their properties moving forward. Small world, isn't it? The realization hit him visibly, wave after wave of understanding washing over his face as the pieces clicked into place. His wife wasn't just making furniture as a hobby. She owned a successful company that was now competing directly with his firm, and winning. This is insane, he muttered. All this time while I thought you were… While you thought I was what, Mike? Too simple to build something successful? Too naive to understand business? Too dependent on you to create my own path? Vanessa had retreated to the bedroom, presumably to pack her things, sensing that her position was rapidly becoming untenable. Mike stood in the middle of the living room, looking suddenly small against the backdrop of the vast ocean view behind him. I need time to process this, he said finally. Take all the time you need, I replied, just not in my house. The afternoon stretched into evening as Mike and Vanessa gathered their belongings. Neither spoke much, moving around each other with the awkward choreography of a relationship already unraveling. I sat at the dining table, laptop open, responding to business emails and finalizing details for the Salem acquisition with Eleanor, all while keeping them in my peripheral vision. I noticed how Vanessa now angled herself away from Mike, how she avoided eye contact with him whenever possible. Their partnership, personal and professional, was disintegrating in real time, and I felt nothing but a curious detachment observing it. By 6 p.m., they had loaded the last of their items into their separate vehicles. Tony had already changed the security codes and provided me with the new ones. As they prepared to leave, Mike approached me one last time. We need to talk about this, Becca, about us, about the business, about everything. There's nothing to discuss tonight, I replied, not looking up from my laptop. I'll be in touch through Olivia once I've had time to evaluate the full scope of your betrayal, both personal and financial. Financial betrayal? What are you talking about? I've never touched your money. I finally looked up at him. You've been working with clients of your design firm to renovate properties that we're bidding to furnish. That's a direct conflict of interest, especially since you've been claiming to them that you could offer package deals including custom furniture that you implied was connected to your work. I've seen the proposals, Mike. Olivia has been tracking this for months. His face paled further. That's not illegal. I never claimed to own your business. No, but you've been leveraging my work without my knowledge or consent to enhance your own professional standing. The fact that you didn't even know it was a multi-million-dollar operation just makes it more pathetic. Vanessa, who had been lingering at the door, watching our exchange with calculated interest, suddenly spoke up. The Mountain View Resort. Installation. That was your company? The custom walnut reception desk and those incredible dining tables with the embedded river glass? I nodded. My designs, my execution, my company. She looked at Mike with undisguised contempt. You told me those were sourced through your special connections in the artisan community. You took credit for finding them. I never specifically said, Mike began. Save it, she cut him off. I'm not interested in your semantic games. She turned to me. For what it's worth, your work is extraordinary. I wish I'd known it was yours. We could have had an actual professional collaboration instead of whatever this was. She gestured vaguely between herself and Mike. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the genuine compliment amidst the chaos. Perhaps under different circumstances. Vanessa nodded, then gave Mike one last withering look before walking out the door. We heard her car start and pull away, leaving Mike standing awkwardly in the entranceway. His confident demeanor completely evaporated. I really thought we were happy, he said quietly. No, Mike, you were happy. Happy having a supportive wife. At home while you built your career and conducted your affair. Happy dismissing my work as a cute hobby while I actually built something significant. You never stopped to ask if I was happy because you assumed I was content with the scraps of attention you occasionally threw my way. He winced at the assessment. Is there any way to fix this? I considered the question, truly considering it despite my anger. I don't know. But it won't start with lies or manipulation or trying to convince me that I'm overreacting. It would start with you recognizing who I actually am, not who you've decided I should be. He nodded slowly, seeming to truly hear me for perhaps the first time in years. I'll call you tomorrow. No, you won't, I corrected. You'll wait for me to contact you through Olivia. I need time and space to decide what happens next. After he left, the house felt simultaneously emptier and more mine than it had in years. I walked through each room, noting the changes Vanessa had made, already planning how I would restore it. Not to what it had been, but to something new that reflected who I was now, not who I'd been pretending to be. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. Salem acquisition papers ready for signature. Call me when you can. I stepped out onto the deck, breathing in the salt air as darkness settled over the ocean. The distant lights of fishing boats dotted the horizon, and I felt a strange sense of peace despite the day's turmoil. I called Eleanor. How did it go? She asked without preamble. About as expected. Mike was blindsided. His girlfriend already abandoned ship. The house is mine again. And how are you feeling? I considered the question carefully. Surprisingly calm, maybe even relieved. Like I've been carrying a heavy disguise for years and finally put it down. That's a good way to describe it, Eleanor said, her voice warm with understanding. I remember feeling the same way after my divorce 30 years ago. It was like I could finally breathe as myself, not as someone's idea of who I should be. Exactly that, I agreed. So, tell me about Salem. We spent the next half hour discussing the acquisition details. The owner of the mill workshop was retiring without succession plans, making it the perfect opportunity to expand our production capacity. The equipment alone was worth the asking price, and the skilled craftspeople who worked there were exactly the talent we needed to handle the coastal hotels contract. We can close by the end of next week if you're ready, Eleanor concluded. I'm ready. Send me the papers tonight and I'll sign them first thing tomorrow. After we hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and settled into one of the Adirondack chairs on the deck. The rhythmic sound of waves breaking on the shore below provided a soothing backdrop as I mentally mapped out the next steps, both personal and professional. My phone rang again, Olivia this time. Tony sent me the security footage, she said without greeting. It's pretty damning, Becca. Weeks of them using the property, multiple overnight stays, clearly romantic in nature. Plus, I've documented Mike's professional misrepresentations regarding your work. We're in a strong position if you want to proceed with divorce. The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. The official end of 12 years of marriage. Despite everything, it still carried weight. Let's not rush, I said finally. I want to consider all options carefully. Can you prepare the paperwork, but hold off on filing anything for now? I need to think through the implications for the business. Of course. But just so you know, I've already created documentation that protects Wilson and Mitchell from any potential claims. The company predates your knowledge of his affair. It's been kept separate from your joint finances, and you've maintained careful records of ownership and investments. He has no legal claim to it. Thank you, Olivia. I knew there was a reason. I kept you as both friend and counsel all these years. Well, someone had to watch your back while you built an empire on the sly, she replied with a hint of pride in her voice. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with remarkable grace. After we hung up, I continued sitting there, watching the stars emerge over the Pacific. The Cannon Beach House had always been my sanctuary, the place where I felt most connected to my true self. Mike's betrayal had temporarily tainted it, but I was reclaiming it, just as I was reclaiming my narrative. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect Oregon coast day that makes you forget the frequent rain and fog. I woke early, made coffee, and took it out to the deck to watch the sunrise over Haystack Rock. My phone had several missed calls from Mike, which I ignored, and an email from Tony confirming that my original furnishings would be returned that afternoon. I'd just finished signing the Salem acquisition papers when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Rebecca Wilson? A woman's voice asked. Yes, speaking. This is Claire Donovan, editor-in-chief at Pacific Northwest Home Magazine. I was at the Mountain View Resort opening last month and was blown away by your furniture installations. I've been trying to track down the creator and just recently learned it was Wilson and Mitchell. I'd love to feature your work in our upcoming sustainable luxury issue. I nearly dropped my coffee. Pacific Northwest Home was the region's premier design publication, with a readership that included exactly the high-end clientele we targeted. I'd be very interested in discussing that, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite my excitement. Wonderful. We're particularly interested in your use of reclaimed and sustainably harvested materials. The way you've elevated local woods into luxury pieces is exactly the kind of story our readers love. Do you have time for a meeting next week? We scheduled a meeting for the following Tuesday, and I hung up feeling a surge of validation. This was exactly the kind of recognition I'd been working toward. Acknowledgement of both the craftsmanship and the environmental philosophy. Behind Wilson and Mitchell, my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Eleanor. Just heard from Coastal Hotels. They've officially terminated their contract with Mike's firm and want to move forward with us immediately. Called it a significant upgrade in quality and vision. Meeting tomorrow at 10? I texted back a quick confirmation, smiling at the cosmic timing of it all. Just as my personal life was imploding, my professional life was soaring to new heights. The universe had a strange sense of balance. The doorbell rang, the delivery team with my original furnishings. I spent the next few hours directing their work, ensuring each piece was returned to its proper place. My handcrafted bed frame, made from reclaimed dock pilings weathered by decades of Pacific tides. My grandfather's antique dresser, its bird's-eye maple gleaming warmly in the sunlight. The dining table I'd created specifically for this space, using a fallen cedar from my timber property. As each piece was returned, the house felt more like mine again. Not mine and Mike's, just mine. There was something powerfully symbolic about reclaiming the space, piece by carefully crafted piece. In the midst of the restoration, my phone rang again, Mike for the 5th time that day. Against my better judgment, I answered. What is it, Mike? I'm busy. Becca, we need to talk. Coastal Hotels just pulled their contract with us. They're going with Wilson and Mitchell instead. Did you orchestrate this? I didn't need to orchestrate anything, I replied calmly. They approached us weeks ago, unhappy with your firm's work. The fact that the owner is finalizing it today is just coincidental timing. This will devastate my division. I was counting on that contract for the next 2 quarters. Perhaps you should have spent more time focusing on client satisfaction and less time redecorating my beach house with your girlfriend. His frustration was palpable even through the phone. "This isn't just business for you, is it? This is revenge." "No, Mike. This is business." Coastal Hotels is making a decision based on quality, sustainability, and vision. Things your firm apparently lacks according to their evaluation. The fact that it impacts you negatively is, as you would say, just an unfortunate side effect of progress. I could practically hear him struggling to regain control of the conversation, to find some way to make me the villain in this scenario. But there was nothing he could say that would shift the fundamental reality. He had underestimated me, betrayed me, and was now facing the consequences of both actions simultaneously. "What do you want, Becca?" he finally asked, his voice tired and defeated. "Just tell me what you want so we can move forward." "I want what I've always wanted, Mike. Respect. Not just words, but actions that demonstrate you see me as an equal, as someone worthy of honesty and consideration. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that's something you're capable of giving." After we hung up, I continued directing the restoration of my house, finding unexpected catharsis in the process. Each decision, what to keep, what to change, what to discard, felt like a small reclamation of my autonomy. By evening, the transformation was complete. The house was mine again, bearing my aesthetic sensibilities, my craftsmanship, my vision. I walked through each room, running my hands over the surfaces of furniture I'd created, appreciating anew the connection between maker and materials. My phone chimed with an email notification. Claire from Pacific Northwest Home, wanting to expand the feature to include a profile on me as a female entrepreneur in the male-dominated world of fine woodworking and sustainable forestry. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, Mike had dismissed my work as insignificant, and now it was being recognized by the very publications that influenced his industry. As night fell, I sat once again on the deck, watching the ocean and contemplating the strange turn my life had taken. In just 2 days, the carefully maintained performance of my marriage had collapsed, revealing the rot beneath the polished surface. And yet, I felt oddly liberated, as if I'd been freed from a role that had grown increasingly restrictive. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Legal documents ready when you are. Also, interesting development. Vanessa Parker called me today. She wants to meet with you. Says she has information about Mike's business practices that might be relevant to your situation." I considered this unexpected twist. Vanessa had seemed genuinely impressed by my work, and her quick abandonment of Mike suggested she might have her own reasons for wanting to distance herself from him professionally. Was this a potential alliance or another complication? "Set up a meeting for when I return to Portland," I texted back. "Neutral location. I'm curious what she has to say." The next day, I drove back to Portland with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The Phoenix option for Wilson & Mitchell was moving forward. The Coastal Hotels contract was secured, and Pacific Northwest Home was planning a feature on my work. Meanwhile, my marriage was effectively over, my beach house was reclaimed, and an unexpected alliance with Mike's former girlfriend might be on the horizon. As I pulled into the driveway of our Portland home, I noticed Mike's car was gone, along with the small signs of his presence that usually dotted the entrance. His running shoes typically left by the door, the stack of business magazines on, the porch chair, the golf umbrella in the stand. He'd cleared out his immediate belongings without being asked, a small act of consideration that was honestly surprising. Inside, I found a note on the kitchen counter. "Staying at the River Place Hotel while I figure things out. I know you need space. I'm sorry for everything. There's more to say when you're ready to hear it. Mike." I set the note aside, neither touched nor angered by it. It was simply information, a data point in the unfolding situation. I unpacked my overnight bag and headed to my workshop, the converted garage space where Wilson & Mitchell had begun before expanding to the industrial studio downtown. The familiar scent of wood and varnish enveloped me as I entered. Cedar and maple, walnut and pine each with its distinctive character. A half-finished console table sat on my workbench, commissioned by a local restaurateur for his new wine bar. I ran my hands over the grain, feeling the subtle ridges and valleys, the living history of the tree preserved in its patterning. This was what Mike had never understood, that my work wasn't just about making furniture. It was about honoring the materials, about creating pieces that would outlast trends and fads, that would develop their own patina of stories over generations of use. It was about sustainability in the deepest sense, not just environmental, but cultural and emotional as well. I picked up my tools and lost myself in the work, shaping and smoothing, the rhythmic motions centering me amid the chaos of my personal life. Hours passed without notice, the only measure of time the changing angle of sunlight through the workshop windows. My phone rang, pulling me reluctantly from my flow state. It was Eleanor. "I've just had the most interesting conversation with Coastal Hotel's CEO," she said without preamble. "Apparently, Mike showed up at their offices this afternoon, trying to salvage the contract." "That doesn't surprise me," I replied, setting down my handplane. "He's desperate to keep them as clients. What might surprise you is what he said. According to Douglas, Mike actually endorsed Wilson and Mitchell as the superior option for their custom furnishing needs. He told them that while his firm could handle the interior design aspects, they should absolutely go with us for the furniture. Because, and I quote, "No one knows wood like Rebecca Wilson." I fell silent, genuinely shocked by this unexpected development. "Becca? Are you still there?" "Yes, just processing. That doesn't sound like Mike." People can surprise you. Sometimes it takes a seismic shock to reveal what they're actually made of. Eleanor paused. "Douglas wants to meet with both of you to discuss a potential collaboration, his design team working directly with your furniture division. It could be an even bigger opportunity than we initially anticipated." "A collaboration? With Mike's firm?" The idea seemed absurd given our current personal situation. Business is business, Becca, and good business sometimes means working with people you'd rather avoid personally. Just think about it. The meeting isn't until next week. After we hung up, I sat at my workbench, turning over this unexpected development in my mind. Mike had spent years dismissing my work, only to publicly endorse it to his most important client at the very moment when our personal and professional lives were in crisis. Was it a strategic move to salvage what he could from a deteriorating situation? A genuine acknowledgement of quality? Or something else entirely? Just as I was contemplating this puzzle, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa Parker. Olivia gave me your number. I know this is awkward, but I have information about Mike's business dealings that you should know. It affects your company too. Can we meet?" The pieces were shifting on the board faster than I could track them, alliances forming and dissolving in unexpected configurations. Whatever came next, one thing was certain. I would face it as Rebecca Wilson, CEO and craftsman, not as Mike's underestimated wife. I arranged to meet Vanessa at a small cafe in Portland's Pearl District, neutral territory, far from both our usual haunts. The industrial chic space, with its exposed brick and steel beams, reminded me of my workshop, honest materials allowed to speak their truth. She arrived precisely on time, dressed more conservatively than at the beach house, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without the context of my home and my husband's betrayal, she looked smaller somehow, less threatening. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I know this is unconventional." "Life rarely follows convention," I replied, studying her face. "Olivia said you have information about Mike's business practices?" Vanessa nodded, opening her portfolio and extracting several folders. "I need to be clear about something first. My relationship with Mike, it wasn't what he probably told you. You don't owe me explanations about your personal choices." Maybe not, but context matters. She straightened in her seat. Mike hired me initially as a design consultant for the Coastal Hotels project. Yes, we became involved personally, but that wasn't my intention when we started working together. And I never knew the extent of his misrepresentations. Misrepresentations? She slid the first folder toward me. These are proposals Mike submitted to Coastal Hotels and 3 other major clients in the past 6 months. Look at the furniture specifications. I opened the folder and scanned the documents, my heart sinking as I recognized renderings of my designs, pieces I'd created for other clients, now being proposed as part of Mike's comprehensive design packages. He'd carefully avoided using our company name, instead referring to artisan-crafted, sustainable furnishings sourced through his exclusive network of master craftspeople. He was essentially selling your work without your knowledge or consent, Vanessa said quietly, positioning himself as the gateway to these custom pieces, taking a substantial markup in the process. When clients asked to meet the actual craftspeople, he always had excuses. I closed the folder, a cold fury building inside me. And you're sharing this now because? Because it's wrong. Because your work deserves proper attribution and compensation. And honestly, because when I saw your actual operation, the scale, and quality of what you've built, I realized I'd been manipulated too. She pushed another folder toward me. This is worse. He's been approaching investors with a business plan to launch an in-house custom furniture division, using your designs as examples of what they could produce. I opened this second folder to find a business plan with my designs prominently, featured this time with slight modifications to avoid direct copying, but unmistakably derivative of my work. The projected financials showed a substantial operation that would directly compete with Wilson & Mitchell. He's been planning to replicate my business, I said, the realization settling like a stone, while simultaneously using your actual work to secure clients in the meantime, Vanessa confirmed. It's why he kept your business success hidden from me, from his colleagues, from everyone. He was mining your expertise and portfolio while developing a competing operation. How did you get these? I was supposed to be part of this new division. Mike positioned it as a natural expansion of our collaborative work. She looked genuinely remorseful. I didn't know he was essentially planning to appropriate his own wife's business model and designs. Not until I saw your actual operation and realized the scale of what you'd already built. We sat in silence for a moment, the implications expanding between us. Mike hadn't just been unfaithful personally. He'd been systematically exploiting my work professionally, preparing to directly compete with me using knowledge gained through our marriage. There's one more thing, Vanessa said, sliding the final folder across the table. After you confronted us at the beach house, I went through Mike's files. These are communications between him and a timber company about harvesting rights to a large forest parcel in the Cascades. Your forest, I believe. My grandfather's timber holdings, the land Mike had dismissed as worthless. He'd been secretly exploring ways to profit from it without my knowledge. He doesn't have the authority to sell or harvest that land, I said, scanning the emails with growing disbelief. It's not jointly owned. It's my inheritance, separate from our marital assets. He was positioning himself as having effective control through your marriage, implying that while the paperwork might be in your name, he could secure the necessary permissions. She met my eyes directly. I'm not proud of my role in any of this. When I realized the extent of his deceptions, to me, to you, to clients, I knew I had to come forward. Why not just walk away? Why get involved in the aftermath? She considered the question carefully. Professional integrity, partly. What he's doing in our industry is unethical. But also, she hesitated. Seeing your work, understanding what you've built while being systematically undermined by the person who should have been your biggest supporter, it hit close to home. I've been in male-dominated fields my entire career. I know what it's like to have your contributions minimized." I studied her face, searching for deception and finding none. "What do you want from this, Vanessa? Clearing your conscience? Revenge? Against Mike?" "Recognition of my own complicity, for starters. I didn't know about your marriage at first, but I continued the relationship after I found out. That was wrong." She straightened her shoulders. "Professionally, I'd like to distance myself completely from this situation. And yes, maybe there's an element of setting things right. Does Mike know you're meeting with me?" "No, and he doesn't know I have these documents either." She gestured to the folders. "The originals are safe. These are copies for you to use however you see fit." After Vanessa left, I remained at the cafe, reviewing the documents more thoroughly. The scope of Mike's betrayal was breathtaking. Not just the affair, which was painful enough, but the systematic exploitation of my work, my ideas, my inheritance. He had been using our marriage as cover to build a competing business modeled directly on mine, while simultaneously profiting from my actual work in the interim. My phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "How did it go with Vanessa?" I replied, "Worse than expected. Much worse. Can you meet at the studio in an hour?" Eleanor and Olivia listened in stunned silence as I laid out what Vanessa had shared: the misappropriation of my designs, the competing business plan, the attempted timber sale. "This changes everything," Olivia said finally, her legal mind already calculating implications. "This isn't just grounds for divorce. This is intellectual property theft, fraud, attempted conversion of separate assets. We have both civil and, potentially, criminal issues here." Eleanor, ever practical, focused on immediate protections. "We need to secure your timber holdings first. File injunctions preventing any harvesting or sale without explicit documented consent from you directly, not through any agent, including a spouse." "Already drafted," Olivia confirmed. "I started that process as soon as Becca texted. But we need to decide how scorched earth you want to go with this, Becca. Full legal pursuit of all these issues would effectively end Mike's career. Is that what you want?" I considered the question carefully, sorting through the tangle of emotions. Betrayal, anger, hurt, but also the lingering echoes of 12 years shared with someone I had once loved deeply. "I want protection, not destruction," I said finally. "I need to secure what I've built and prevent further exploitation, but I don't need to salt the earth of his entire career." "A strategic approach, then," Olivia nodded. "We use these documents as leverage for a comprehensive settlement that protects your interests without necessarily pursuing public legal action that would destroy him professionally." "Assuming he's rational when confronted," Eleanor cautioned. "Men with fragile egos don't always respond logically when their self-image is threatened." "Then we prepare for both scenarios," I decided. "The reasonable settlement and the nuclear option. His choice which path we take." We spent the next 2 hours developing our strategy. By the time I left the studio, a plan was in place that would protect Wilson and Mitchell, secure my inheritance, and offer Mike a path forward that preserved his dignity, while ensuring he could never again exploit my work or assets. That evening, as I worked in my studio at home, smoothing the edges of a walnut console that would soon grace the lobby of a new hotel in Seattle, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the workshop window, I watched Mike approach the house, hesitate at the front door, then turn toward the garage instead. He knew my patterns well enough to know where I'd be. He knocked on the workshop door, a courtesy he'd rarely extended before. "Come in," I called, not pausing in my work. He entered slowly, his eyes moving from me to the piece I was crafting, then to the designs pinned on the wall behind me. The complete Coastal Hotels collection that would soon be in production at our expanded facility. "That's beautiful," he said quietly, gesturing to the console. "The grain pattern is extraordinary. Single slab of Claro walnut from a tree that fell naturally on my timber property last year. I've been aging it, waiting for the right project. He nodded, clearly seeing my work with new eyes. Becca, I don't know where to start. I've made so many mistakes. I set down my tools and turned to face him fully. Let's start with honesty, Mike. Complete honesty. I know about the design proposals using my work. I know about your plans to launch a competing furniture division. And I know about your attempts to sell timber rights to my inheritance. His face paled. For a moment, he seemed ready to deny everything, his mouth forming the beginning of a protest. Then his shoulders slumped. Vanessa, he said, not a question, but a realization. Does it matter? The facts are what they are. He moved to the workbench, his fingers tracing the edge of a wood sample. Eastern maple, still rough cut and waiting for transformation. I got lost somewhere along the way, he said finally, watching your quiet success while my own career stagnated. The more accomplished you became, the more I needed to prove my own worth. It wasn't conscious at first, just finding ways to leverage your talents to enhance my professional standing. But it grew into something ugly, something I didn't recognize in myself until it was fully formed. That explains it, but doesn't excuse it. I know. He met my eyes directly for the first time. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Becca. I'm here to offer a clean resolution. My attorney has already drawn up paperwork recognizing your full ownership of all designs, business assets, and timber holdings. I've withdrawn the competing furniture division proposal and informed all clients that Wilson & Mitchell should be contracted with directly for any custom furnishings. I studied his face, searching for the manipulation I'd come to expect, but finding instead a resigned clarity. Why the sudden change of heart? Seeing you at the beach house, truly seeing you as a business owner, not just my wife with a hobby, was like waking up from a haze I didn't know I was in. He shook his head slowly. Then Douglas from Coastal Hotels called me into his office after I tried to salvage our contract. He showed me their full file on Wilson & Mitchell, including installation photos from projects I didn't even know existed. The scale of what you've built while I was dismissing your work. It forced me to see myself clearly, and I didn't like what I saw. So this is about salvaging your self-image? Being able to tell yourself you did the right thing in the end? Partly, he admitted with surprising candor. But it's also about finally giving you what you deserved all along. Recognition and respect. I can't undo the past, but I can ensure I'm not an obstacle to your future. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. This contains my proposed settlement terms. They're heavily in your favor. The house, the beach property, full ownership recognition of all business assets and intellectual property, and a non-compete clause preventing me from working in custom furnishings for 5 years. My attorney thought I was crazy, but it's the minimum you deserve after what I've done. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. I'll have Olivia review it. Of course. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Becca, your work is extraordinary. What you've built is remarkable. I'm sorry I couldn't see you until it was too late. After he left, I returned to my console, running my hands over the walnut surface, feeling its unique character beneath my fingertips. The wood had come from a tree that had stood for over 200 years before falling naturally in a winter storm. Now it would begin its second life as a functional piece of art that might last for generations more. There was wisdom in that transformation, in honoring what had fallen, in creating something new from what remained. The next morning, I met with Olivia to review Mike's offer. It was, as he'd said, extraordinarily favorable. Acknowledging my full ownership of all business assets, clarifying my separate ownership of the timber holdings, relinquishing any claims to the properties, and including a substantial compensatory payment for his misuse of my designs. This is better than anything we could have realistically obtained through litigation, Olivia admitted, reviewing the final pages. The question is why? What's his angle? "I'm not sure he has one, beyond trying to salvage something of his self-image," I replied. "Sometimes people do the right thing simply because they've run out of justifications for doing the wrong thing." We finalized the agreement with minimal changes, and within a week, my marriage was effectively dissolved on paper, though the legal divorce would take longer to process. Mike relocated to Chicago for a fresh start, accepting a position with a firm that specialized in commercial spaces, well away from the residential and hospitality sectors where Wilson and Mitchell operated. 3 months later, as spring breathed new life into Oregon's forests, the expanded Wilson and Mitchell facility in Salem was in full production. The Pacific Northwest home feature had generated a flood of new client inquiries, and the Coastal Deuce Hotel's installation was proceeding ahead of schedule. My grandfather's timberland was secure, with a conservation easement now protecting it from development in perpetuity, while allowing sustainable selective harvesting for our furniture production. I stood in my workshop at home, now expanded into what had once been Mike's home office, putting the finishing touches on a rocking chair crafted from the same walnut tree as the hotel console. This piece wasn't for a client, though. It was for me, a tangible reminder of transformation, of second lives, of beauty emerging from what had fallen. As I applied the final coat of oil, bringing out the wood's deep, complex grain patterns, I reflected on the strange journey of the past months. The painful collapse of my marriage had simultaneously catalyzed the expansion of my business and the reclamation of my authentic self. From the ashes of what had been, something stronger and truer had emerged, like the mythical phoenix Eleanor and I had named our expansion plan after. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Timber assessment complete. That stand of old growth. Cedar is even more valuable than we estimated. Sustainable management plan approved by the state. Your grandfather would be proud." I smiled, running my fingers along the arm of the rocking chair, feeling the silky smoothness of wood shaped by patient, deliberate craft. Some things couldn't be rushed. Not the growth of trees, not the curing of timber, not the building of something meant to last. The property manager's call about my vacation home had set in motion a cascade of revelations and changes. But the true transformation had begun years earlier, with each quiet decision to build something meaningful while being systematically underestimated. The beach house confrontation had merely brought to the surface what had been developing all along: my resilience, my vision, my unwillingness to remain small to make someone else feel large. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through my workshop windows, I sat in my newly completed rocking chair, its gentle motion soothing and rhythmic. The wood felt warm beneath my hands, alive with possibilities. From my window, I could see the first shipment of timber from my grandfather's land being delivered to the expanded workshop, raw material awaiting transformation into objects of beauty and purpose. Something old becoming something new without forgetting where it came from. Just like me. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.